From Wrath of the Lich King to Cataclysm, a ton changes within all aspects of the game, from PvP, our classes, raiding, and more. As we currently are at the moment, time is pressing on for Wrath of the Lich King. The 30% ICC buff was finally pushed out the other week, meaning we're very much on the home stretch to Classic's next destination. A return to a revamped Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor with so much to look forwards to. As for me, I know I'm going to be playing Cata, for the most part for the raiding though, as I pretty much always have done with Classic so far, and it is about time I got started with more videos on the topic because, well, I don't know if you saw the Classic roadmap they put out a bit ago. They did move the Cata beta date on it from late winter to early spring, but all indications show that it's going to be pretty soon. Of course, I'll still be covering Season of Discovery as the server progresses too. This channel has always been about Classic as a whole, and that's evolved over time to mean several different things. After all, players literally have so much choice from the game now, between Wrath, which will soon be Cata, the seasonal servers, hardcore, and era. Surely I will not read comments about how Cata is the worst thing ever from people who have no intention of playing it, whilst also having 3 different versions of vanilla to choose from. 4 if you want to count the self-found hardcore mode. This will definitely not happen. Anyways, today is about changes specific to PvE content from Wrath to Cata. For me, this is an area of the game which I'm looking forwards to the most from the upcoming expansion. I played it a lot back in the day and really felt as though it delivered a challenging experience, which we've only got to see now and again from the odd fight in Classic thus far. But with all that said, let's make a start. These for me are 5 of the biggest changes to come with the PvE scene moving into Cata. One of the most defining features in Cataclysm is that it's one of the very few expansions in WoW's history where 10-man raiding is a real possibility for a guild that has a smaller group but still wants to see some challenging content. During Wrath of the Lich King, Blizzard changed something about how raiding worked in every single tier, from 10 and 25 mans in tier 7, hard modes in Ulduar, heroics and attempts in TOGC, and finally shared lockouts with heroics and staggered content releases in ICC. It was a roller coaster of changes, so for Cataclysm, Blizzard settled on a different format. Now you'll be able to run 10 or 25 heroic once per week, and after a boss is defeated, you will now be locked to that ID for the week. It would still be possible to join multiple different normal runs, however, but you could only kill each boss once per week. Alongside this, Blizzard also took the ambitious step to make each different size of the raid very similar to one another in difficulty, and since heroic mode would now share lockouts between the 2 raid sizes, you had to make a choice here. Now this balancing act between 10 and 25 was tough. There were without a doubt some fights which were far more difficult on 10 player, whilst being easier on 25. Alphas Wormbreaker, the first boss of Bastion of Twilight, comes to mind, but it was always going to be a challenge to go down this path of trying to fix both raid sizes. In 10-player raids, you have less people, so less worrying about that room space as often, and sometimes things were tuned more favorably, whereas in 25 you had straight up more defensive cooldowns to deal with high damage phases, more interrupts, a much easier time putting together a raid comp which covered all debuffs and buffs, 3 combat reses instead of the 1 you got in 10-man, and a bunch more. And 10-player heroic raiding really could not afford any weak links. That one guy that messes up often might just get by in 25, as perhaps they don't receive mechanics as often, but there's no crowd to hide it in 10-man. If you mess up early, it can just straight up be a wipe. Another big change here is that raid sizes would now drop the same loot. They were also at the same power level between each different size and difficulty. As we have it at the moment in Wrath, loot tables for 10-man have always been different, and sometimes that means your BIS is technically a lower item level piece, but it just has some kind of effect which makes it especially good for your class. And you can tell how popular 10-mans for BIS was by the fact that eventually Blizzard put all the Ulduar 10-man hard mode stuff on a vendor so people could finally get them. But this won't be the case anymore in Cata, and I have a feeling that Blizzard are going to keep 10 and 25 separated for lockouts because, well, otherwise your guild is going to have a very strong incentive to run both versions of the raid because they'll drop items as good as one another. You remember having to do 2 Ulduars because that one guy didn't get his runestone yet? As much as I enjoy raiding, I don't know if I want to go back to doing that again, but Cata will once again offer that 10-man raiding experience. So if you have a smaller group and you still want a challenge, Cata will be a good time for you. Cata also did a ton to revamp dungeons too. You know that thing when you port into a dungeon through the LFD and it just gives you quests at the start? That's from Cata. Some older dungeons also got big revamps too to be more in theme with the post-shattering world. Notably, the iconic Dead Mines was given a huge revamp, as well as the elusive Shadowfang Keep. Oh, and also, kind of a side note, but the adventure guide was also added during Cata, so you could see what items drop where well in advance, as well as check out the boss mechanics. I always enjoyed reading the differences between normal and heroic raid boss mechanics and trying to imagine how they would actually play in practice. But Blizzard giving us the mechanics did not make things easy. In fact, it was the total opposite. The dungeon content in Cata was designed, at least on heroic mode, to be worthy of the word heroic. Players had come from Wrath of the Lich King, where dungeon content consisted of gathering stuff up in a big ball and then pressing AoE abilities and running straight through everything, which was fun enough for a bit, but it was otherwise very lacking. Cata heroics on launch were brutal. There were super dangerous trash packs, abilities that needed to be interrupted, and plenty of ways to basically get one shot if you weren't paying attention. These days I don't think they're going to be as difficult as people remembered because we've just improved as a whole as a player base. In fact, with good CC, rolling cooldowns and understanding what's dangerous, I think you'll be surprised how many trash packs, even early in the expansion, you can just ball up an AoE down, though it's going to need a lot more finesse to pull off successfully than what you need to do in Wrath, because for real, some of the damage output of mobs in Cata is no joke. But back in the day, these dungeons were swiftly given the nerf hammer for the main reason that, well, you could queue as a random group into these heroics with suboptimal gear, and more often than not, it was a complete disaster. I have to say though, with a proper group, the Cata dungeons will be some of the most fun you'll have had in 5-man content in Classic so far, and are well worth trying out. Also, Blizzard basically confirmed the Titan Rune dungeon system will be ported forwards to Cata too, so these dungeons are going to be kept relevant as we progress through the expansion. In Cataclysm as well, there are also the reworked Zul'Aman and Zul'Gurub raids made into dungeons, as well as the 3 Hour of Twilight dungeons right at the end of the expansion, so there should be a good amount of 5-man content to do. And it's not just the dungeons which have a jump up in difficulty either. I'd say I've enjoyed Wrath of the Lich King raids as a whole, but the difficulty of them is just absolutely all over the place. Did you remember that they buffed tier 7 raids by 20% and you could still just walk in them as soon as they were open in a straight line, one-shotting everything no problem? Or what about Trial of the Grand Crusader? Then on the other hand, we had fights like pre-nerf Yogg Zero, Algalon the Observer, and above all, Lich King 25 Heroic. If you're a progression raiding enjoyer where gear and upgrades mean more than just a bit of a faster boss kill, then Cata may be the experience you're after. In fact, if you cleared ICC 25 Heroic pretty early on and want to see more of that, I think you're gonna like Cata raiding a lot. And if you don't believe me on it being harder, well, here's a few words from a member of Paragon after claiming world first tier 11 back in 2010. He says, all in all, this tier of raiding in my opinion has been the hardest tier of raiding overall. There haven't been many pushover bosses on heroic difficulty, there hasn't been any gating, there haven't been any attunements and such. It's just been one big absolutely brutal grind. And this should remain true today. I do wonder whether Blizz will delay the opening of the raid by 1 week, similar to what they did with Wrath of the Lich King though. The idea here is to allow players time to enjoy their leveling journey and not feel pressed to level as soon as possible, so not to miss the first lockout. Then again, I think tons of guilds would have been capable of clearing next 25, no problem in mostly just their Sunwell gear, whereas doing Cata heroic raids a few days in would prove a significant challenge. Back then it took 42 days from expansion launch to tier 11 being clear. These days, would it be possible in under 7? I want to say yes, because top end guilds will be able to class stack super hard and there wouldn't be any bugged encounters, and it could also make for the first race to world first in Classic, which is actually kind of interesting and lasts a few days. I guess we'll see what Blizzard decides to do here in terms of locking the raid or not, but either way, it'll be one to look forwards to. Next thing to bring up is the currency rework from Wrath to Cata. So in Wrath, there are a lot of currencies. There are emblems of heroism, valor, conquest, triumph, Frost, Stonekeeper shards, honor, arena points, and so on. There's even a bunch more than that. It all started to get a bit much, so in Cata, Blizzard went to simplify this system down. Now in PvE, there's basically two currencies, Justice Points and Valor Points. Justice Points are from repeatable or daily activities and are used to either buy heroic dungeon level gear at the start of the expansion or old raid gear as new tiers are released, whereas Valor Points will be used to buy raid equivalent gear for the current tier. And in PvP, there is Honor and Conquest Points, and they're kind of similar to how the PvE currencies work. Honor is for your starter gear or old arena sets as seasons progress, and Conquest Points are for the current arena season gear. So the very simple version is Conquest and Valor is for the new stuff, and you can earn up to a certain cap each week, and Justice and Honor Points are for the old stuff. You can earn these from repeatable activities and grind as much as you want. Both the Justice Points and Honor Points had a cap of 4,000, and each patch your remaining Valor Points and Conquest Points would be converted into their respective lower end currencies. However, points exceeding the cap would be converted into gold. Now, when we went from Wrath to Cata originally, there were some conversions done with Wrath currencies, which might be of interest to you these days. First up is the Emblems of Heroism, Valor, Conquest, and Badges of Justice from TBC were all just converted into gold at the rate shown here. Probably worth investing these into either gems, heirlooms, Reigns of the Woolly Mammoth, something of the like. Personally, I go for the looms as the cost in Emblems now is way better than it would be post-conversion. For example, a Bloodied Arcanite Reaper in Cata is 3,500 Justice Points. That's equivalent to trading down just over 300 badges of Triumph or Frost, whereas now you can get it for 65 badges. However, I wouldn't go trading away all your emblems if you do want to get a head start when Cata drops. So if Triumph and Frost emblems are still converted to Justice Points at a rate of 1 to 11.58, that means if you have a total of 346 badges of Frost or Triumph combined, that when the conversion happens, you'll hit the Justice Point cap of 4,000, meaning you can go and get 2 pieces of heroic item level 346 gear instantly from a vendor. There shouldn't be any point having more badges than that though, as they'll be converted to gold. As for your current PvP currencies, they will also be converted into Just Honor at the rate shown here. The new Honor points will also have a cap of 4,000 as well, so similar to PvE, it may be possible to prepare for this now as well. Word of warning here, of course, we don't know what Blizzard are going to be doing here yet. I just wanted to show you what you can do with excess emblems at the moment to get the most out of them, but at the same time, I don't want you feeling as though you've wasted them either. For me, on my main, I'm going to have about 350 Frost and Triumph emblems for the Justice Point cap, and I'm going to trade down the rest to Emblems of Heroism and pretty much just buy out every heirloom. And the final big point I want to bring up here is how Blizzard really committed to creating a bit more of a divide between casual and hardcore content. This is something that they've been experimenting with throughout the duration of Wrath of the Lich King to see what worked best, iterating through hard modes, heroics, attempts, staggered releases, and more. Back in the day when the harder content hit, it was a surprise and a change of pace for the game for many, yet difficult heroic and later mythic raids have become an absolute cornerstone of World of Warcraft over the years. They may appeal to a smaller crowd than easier and more accessible content, but the people who like them tend to really like them. And by today's standards, the average player is taking on way harder content than they would have back in the day. Check this out, for example. WoW progress shows between the first clear of ICC 25 Heroic by Paragon on March 26, 2010, and the day before Cata's release on December 6, 2010, that there were 1,001 guilds that had cleared the raid fully on Heroic, whereas Warcraft Log shows just under 3,800 full clears of ICC 25 Heroic that have been completed as of doing this video. This number is going to be above 4,000 easily before Cata drops. Reminder that back in the day, during this patch we're on now in Wrath of the Lich King, that World of Warcraft was around 12 million subs. So yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying a lot more people actually do enjoy the challenging content and are playing the game for that. I reckon you'll start to see more of a crossover from high-end retail raiders coming to Classic as well, as kind of a middle ground between vanilla content, which is kind of just chill, and Mythic, which is extremely difficult. Heroic in Cata is somewhere in the middle of those 2 points, I'd say. say. Also, similar to Wrath of the Lich King, Cata raiding is pretty low maintenance once you have everything set up on your main. So if raiding is the thing you want to be doing a lot of, Cata should be a great experience for that too. And given the more experienced nature of the average player, I think that Cata's PvE content will stand the test of time when we finally get stuck into it once again. But that is all for today. Let me know your thoughts on Cata's PvE, whether you did it back in the day or whether it's going to be your first time giving it a go as a new player to Classic in the comments down below. And thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.